remember sitting at a cold table in the schoolyard that morning, staring at a glossy flyer for the Student Council's summer camping trip. Let me introduce myself first. I'm Addison, and I live in Colorado. Ever since my dad passed away when I was only 7 years old, my mom and I have been completely broke. Honestly, I was still waiting for the day my mom would reveal we were secret millionaires, but I knew that would never happen. She always got irritated whenever I asked for money. So this expensive summer camp felt entirely out of reach for a girl from a humble background like me. Suddenly, Katie and Candace, our school's mean girls, snatched the flyer from my hand. They sat on either side of me, trapping me while throwing their arms over my shoulder. Katie loudly asked Candace if she was ready for the trip. Candace smirked, bragging about her new hair, nails, and clothes before sarcastically asking what I had prepared. Katie fake apologized, laughing as she reminded me that a poor loser like me could never afford to join. Hot tears pricked my eyes as they laughed and walked away. Layla, a classmate who witnessed everything, walked over to comfort me and offered to help. But my pride was hurt, so I furiously shouted at her to stay away, telling her a rich kid would never understand. I flicked her hand away and ran off. Later that evening, I stood in our shabby kitchen and watched my mom getting ready for her night shift. She did not seem to be in a bad mood, so I thought it was my chance. I nervously told her I needed money for the camp because it was my last chance to sign up. My mom cut me off with an annoyed sigh, asking if I realized we could barely afford rent, and told me to make my own money instead of begging. She added that I was being completely unthoughtful for my age. A wave of anger washed over me, and I screamed back, asking if she had ever been thoughtful of my feelings. I yelled that I hated how poor we were and shouted that I hated her more than anything else. Seeing the utter shock on her tired face, I ran to my room, packed a backpack, and stormed out into the night. By 2 o'clock in the morning, I was sitting all shrunk up on a cold bench under a small porch with my bicycle right beside me. The snowstorm was only getting worse, freezing the air. My phone kept buzzing, but I ignored dozens of calls from my mom, telling myself there was no way I would ever return to that house. Shivering uncontrollably, I rummaged through my backpack for my mittens. Instead, an old copy of Alice in Wonderland fell out into the snow. I picked it up and dusted it off. It was my favorite book, and looking at it made memories of my dad come rushing back. I could still picture his gentle eyes and warm voice reading to me. Trying to distract myself from the storm, I turned the pages until my phone lit up with another call from my mom. I answered it, ready to tell her to stop bothering me, but a strange voice from a hospital told me my mom had just been in a terrible accident at work. Panic gripped my chest. I hopped onto my bike and pedaled into the blinding blizzard. The fierce wind threw heavy piles of snow against my face. Suddenly, I lost control, let out a sharp scream, and crashed hard onto the icy ground before everything went black. When I slowly opened my eyes, I was lying on a wooden bench, squinting from bright sunlight. I let out a big yawn, realizing I was still wearing my winter clothes. But everything looked as fresh as a spring day. I rubbed my eyes, completely confused, to find myself in a beautiful garden filled with vibrant red rose. Suddenly, a giant acorn crashed down next to me and split in half. Inside was a small piece of paper welcoming me to Wonderland. I firmly slapped myself across the face to wake up, telling myself that my mom was in danger and I needed to stop daydreaming. Just then, a loud scream broke the silence as a guard shouted that there was an intruder and ordered others to restrain her. 2 men in military uniforms rushed in, grabbed my arms, and forced me through a tiny rose art. On the other side, I looked around in total awe. We were inside a massive greenhouse with a grand tea table in the middle, where a well-dressed man was waiting. He wore a royal crown and introduced himself as Edward, the King of Wonderland. My jaw dropped. He looked so identical to my late father that I almost blurted out the word Dad. King Edward welcomed me warmly and gestured toward a table loaded with lavish food. Since I hadn't eaten since yesterday, I couldn't help but dig right in. I was completely distracted until a cuckoo clock chimed on the wall, snapping me back to reality. Remembering my mom, I urgently asked him for the exit. He explained that a monster ruled the gate, and if I wanted to leave, I would have to bring that monster 3 valuable items. I asked in doubt what those 3 items were, and King Edward told me to wait so we could find out. King Edward walked over to a glass pane of the greenhouse, wiggling his shoulders and acting completely goofy as he treated it like a magic mirror. He dramatically asked who the most handsome of them all was. The glass shimmered, and a deep voice echoed back, praising His Highness as the most handsome and elegant person alive. King Edward burst into a silly laugh, replying that if he were the mirror, he would want to be himself too. Then, turning serious, he demanded to know what items I needed to leave. The magic mirror answered that to escape, I must acquire a fair lock of Rapunzel's hair, the scarf of Red Riding Hood, and Aladdin's magic lamp before midnight, or be stuck in this world for an eternity. My jaw dropped, and I asked if it was serious, wondering where on earth I was supposed to find those things. King Edward told me not to worry, promising to send his close bodyguard Arthur to accompany me. Right then, a tall, handsome guy about my age appeared. I stood there a bit dumbfounded. Arthur walked up, flicked me gently on the forehead, and told me there was no time to wait. He threw a bundle of clothes at me to change into a blue dress that looked exactly like the one Alice wears, matching his own outfit. Once ready, we went back through the arch, but this time it led into a dark, damp underground sewer system. I covered my nose, complaining about how terribly it stank, and asking what we were doing down there. Arthur did not say a word. He just quickly found a staircase leading above ground. I followed him out of a manhole cover onto a busy city street. I noticed everyone looking up at the sky, so I did too. High above, a massive stream of golden hair was falling from the penthouse of a skyscraper. I blinked in disbelief, thinking how ridiculous it was that Rapunzel lived in the Empire State Building. We walked over to the entrance, but it was strictly blocked by a group of muscular bodyguards. I whispered to Arthur, asking how we could get in. Arthur turned to me with a smile and said that was exactly why he had told me to wear. Looking around, I realized our clothes looked just like the staff uniforms. We easily blended in with the maids and waiters, slipping past the guards into the tower. The elevator doors opened and my jaw dropped. I had never set foot in such a luxurious house in my entire life. It smelled of expensive perfume and wealth. Suddenly, a soft voice behind us asked who we were. Startled, I turned around to see Rapunzel herself standing right in front of me, her golden hair pooling around her feet. But as I blinked, I realized she looked incredibly familiar. I rushed over to her and exclaimed that it was Layla, adding that I always knew she was rich, but I never expected her to live in such a beautiful house. Layla gently pushed me back, her eyes wide with confusion, and asked if I actually knew her. I excitedly pulled out my wallet and showed her our old Polaroid class photos. She looked at them with immense interest, but she simply could not recall her past and kept begging me to tell her stories about our school. As I was rambling on about our friends, Arthur suddenly tapped my shoulder, pointed at his watch, and whispered that I needed to carry on with the task. I checked the time and realized with a jolt that 2 hours had already passed. Choosing my words very carefully, I asked her for a lock of her hair, and she happily agreed. But just as Arthur and I turned to leave, Layla tightly clung to my arm, her eyes filling with tears as she pleaded with me to stay with her, promising to give me all the clothes, shoes, and anything else I want. For a second, I was completely tempted. My eyes sparkled as I ran over to pick up a few incredibly expensive items, asking if all this luxury stuff could really be mine. Layla nodded eagerly, saying of course it could. But right then, Arthur sternly patted my shoulder and told me to wake up, sharply asking if I had forgotten what we came here for, and if I was truly willing to give up on seeing my mother ever again just for some flashy thing. His words hit me like a splash of cold water. My expression dropped, and my arms went limp, causing the expensive items to crash back onto the floor. I turned to Layla, telling her I was so sorry, but I really had to go because my mom was in serious danger. Layla broke down, begging me to take her with us because she could not stand staying in that hideous house anymore. I looked around in confusion and told her she had everything on earth here, saying it looked like heaven to me. Layla sobbed, shaking her head as she cried out that it was actually hell, and that all the material things were completely meaningless. She told me what she truly needed was freedom, her school, her friends, and the ability to do what she wanted. It turned out that after her parents' messy divorce, her greedy dad did everything to win custody just to keep her locked up here, exploiting her gorgeous blonde hair to make money. She wept, saying she missed her mom and would rather live in a small, shabby house than this flashy, cold prison. Hearing that, I knew I could not leave her behind. I remembered how Eugene saved Rapunzel in the movie, so with Layla's eager approval, I used a pair of scissors to cut her long hair short. Then, we hid her inside a large service cart, and Arthur and I quickly pushed it out of the penthouse, running away into the night. We dropped Layla off at school, where her mom was already waiting. Watching their tearful reunion, I realized that freedom, friends, or someone who truly cares for you are much more valuable than superficial wealth. Sadly, I had always craved what I did not have and took everything I did have for granted. Arthur nudged my shoulder and dragged me inside. I asked in confusion if we had to attend class too, since we were running out of time to find Red Riding Hood. Without a word, he led me to the front staircase, where a girl was leaning against the handrail, glued to her phone with a scarf on her head. Arthur pointed and said she was the person I needed. I waved, but she looked up coldly and asked what I wanted. I gasped. Red Riding Hood was none other than Katie, our school's mean girl. I hesitated, then told her I really needed her red scarf. Katie scoffed, saying it was a limited edition Gucci scarf that cost a fortune, sneering that I probably did not have a dime to my name. I begged, admitting it was true, but promised to do anything she wanted. Katie smirked, telling me she hoped I would not regret it, right before a luxury car picked us up. We stopped at an apple farm, and the sweet smell made my heart sink because it was where my mom worked. Katie told me she wanted to bake a pie for her mom, so I had to pick a box of apples completely alone. I thought one box would be a piece of cake, but her box was actually a massive container meant for 1,000 pounds of apples. The sun beat down as I stood on a tall ladder. After hours of picking under the scorching heat, my head started spinning. I lost my balance and fell, but luckily Arthur caught me just in time. He helped me sit and gently asked if I could imagine how hard my mom worked here every day just to earn food. It was a sudden awakening. I finally understood why she was always so tired. After harvesting enough apples, I brought them to exchange for the scarf. But Katie insisted I pick the 10 most perfect one. No matter what I chose, she scowled, pointing out tiny scratches. I angrily shouted that she was being too much. But Katie insisted everything for her mom had to be the best because she was sick. She told me that when her mom was pregnant, the doctor advised her to terminate it for her safety, but she risked her life to give birth to Katie anyway. Hearing that, tears welled up in my eyes. Katie asked if I was tired from the work, but I told her I just missed my mom and wanted to get back to her. I realized even a mean girl like Katie loved her mom deeply while I was just a terrible, demanding child. I cried harder. Katie's voice softened, seeing I had learned my lesson. She handed me a perfect apple, asking me to deliver it to my heroic mother, and then gave me her scarf to complete the mission. I wiped my tears, beaming with happiness as I took it. By evening, we arrived at our final destination, a massive museum. Inside, the halls were dimly lit, with spotlights casting long shadows from giant dinosaur skeletons. As I walked past them, I could swear those massive bones were shifting their heads to look at me, making me feel like I was being followed. Arthur told me the magic lamp was hidden in a secret room, but getting the key was an absolute nightmare. The key sat on a pedestal guarded by a web of glowing anti-theft laser. Realizing we could not walk in, we crept through the ventilation system. Arthur tied a rope around my waist and slowly lowered me down. I reached out and grabbed the key, but a single drop of sweat fell from my forehead, instantly setting off a blaring alarm. Guards burst through the doors, but Arthur hauled me up just in time. We scrambled out of the shaft, but the place was a maze of brick corridors. Hearing footsteps, Arthur pulled me behind a wall, propping his hand against the brick. We were standing so close that I felt awkward, and my heart pounded as his face got close. Suddenly, the wall shifted. Arthur had accidentally pushed a hidden brick, opening a secret staircase to the basement. We found the room, and I unlocked it, but inside there was only an old projector. I asked in confusion where the magic lamp was. Arthur switched the machine on. Images appeared on the white wall, showing my mom looking exhausted after a long day, then gently tucking me into bed and waking up early to make my favorite breakfast. Most of all, I saw pictures of her carrying heavy crates at a convenience store, working overtime just so I could afford the camping trip. I burst into tears, completely overwhelmed by her love. Arthur handed me the projector, gently reminding me that time was running out and I needed to hurry back. I wiped away my tears, determined to return to my mom as fast as possible. We hurried straight back to King Edward's garden. Clutching all the items, I excitedly announced that I was back and asked him to take me to the gate. Suddenly, a loud chiming sound echoed through the air, freezing me in my track. King Edward looked at me sadly and said our time was up, meaning I had failed the quest. He tried to comfort me, saying staying there was not bad at all, and that I would have everything I could ever want. I burst into tears, shaking my head. I begged him to lead me to the monster at any cost, sobbing that I did not need luxury anymore because I just wanted to be with my mom. I admitted I had been completely thoughtless and could not leave her when she needed me most. Hearing this, King Edward smiled gently. He explained that there was actually no monster. The true monster was the greed, selfishness, and ingratitude inside every one of us. Since I had defeated my inner monster and learned my lesson, he said I could go back to my mom. When I slowly opened my eyes, everything was blindingly bright. Someone tightly squeezed my hand, and my mom's warm voice told me that thank goodness I was awake. She explained that she had collapsed at work from overworking, and then found out I had fallen off my bike in the snowstorm and knocked myself unconscious. My mom gently placed some money in my hand, telling me I could go on the camping trip. She apologized for upsetting me and promised to work extra hard so I would never go without. I burst into tears and shook my head, leaning over to hug her tightly. I told her I did not need the trip and did not want her risking her health for me anymore. Having her healthy and by my side was all I needed. I begged her to forgive me for everything. As we pulled apart, I noticed someone standing quietly in the doorway. It was Arthur. It turned out that Arthur was the one who had rescued me from the snowstorm. I thanked him from the bottom of my heart, telling him he was my knight in shining armor. Arthur smiled, saying he was just glad I was okay. I insisted that I would never have completed the tasks without him. Arthur looked puzzled and asked what tasks I meant. Looking into his dreamy eyes, I felt like he had been sent by my dad to help me learn from my mistakes and be grateful for what I had. I just smiled and told him never mind, adding that I was just glad he was there.